You'd have a plaintiff in a defamation claim would issue proceedings in New Zealand, and then if they needed more information, they'd ask the New Zealand court to make the orders, even if it's against a third party like Glassdoor, and then they would then go to the US and see if they could get that order. They've bypassed that process, and they've gone straight to an American magistrate judge and said, we want these orders for subpoenas, document subpoenas, requiring Glassdoor to hand over this information because we intend to sue. They haven't done it.
Yep.
They just say they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, why would they do that? I mean, how can an American judge rule on something that affects a New Zealand defamation case?
Yeah, OK, so the centre point here is that Glassdoor is a Californian company, and presumably the information, they've got access to it at least in California. I mean, I don't know where the servers are, but they'll have access to it. And what the American laws provide for it's a comity kind of reciprocal judgment idea where they go, we'll help in effectively giving information for the purposes of litigating in foreign territories, in this case New Zealand, in the hope that countries like New Zealand would return the favour.
Quid pro quo,
yeah,
all right.
Quid pro quo.
OK, so these reviews, if they were written anonymously, but if it was an honest opinion held by the reviewer of Zuru, doesn't that protect the writer?
Well, it could as a defence, OK? So it's what they call an affirmative defence. So we'll take a step back here, OK? The step's this. In New Zealand, unlike the US isn't plaintiff-friendly when it comes to defamation.
OK.
Because they've got a constitutional First Amendment freedom of speech.
So is it easier to sue for defamation in New Zealand than in...
Much easier.
OK, all right. So Glassdoor, the review company, if they are forced to reveal the identities of who wrote those reviews, Zuru then comes here and launches the defamation proceedings here. So what does Zuru have to prove here to make a successful defamation case?
OK, well, I guess the first thing is we've got to assume that these reviewers actually exist, that they're not fake reviews.
Well, that would make it hard, wouldn't it?
Well, make it pretty hard. And of course, you know, the issue with this is that the whole process of setting up an account on Glassdoor or any of these review sites doesn't require any real solid form of authentication. So they don't know if these people, A, actually exist, B, actually here in New Zealand, you know, and they're actually not a competitor of Zuru who have, you know, just engaging in a smear campaign. They don't know, and until there's an attempt to identify, and there's only so much that Glassdoor can do, and they can say, here's the account information that was set up. We can't say it was true or not, and maybe they might even be able to provide some IP addresses which allow you to trace through where the user was at the time they set up the account and made the review.
Is it really worth pursuing that, given that these could be fake reviews, or given that there may not be a real person at the end of that IP address?
Well, let's think about what Zuru are trying to achieve here. Well, what we'd like to think they're trying to achieve, and that is they've got a reputation that they say is of value, and that reputation has been, in their mind, unjustifiably attacked, and it's costing them money. In the judgment, one of the founders stated or provided an affidavit saying, well, we tried to recruit a senior manager and they didn't want the job because they had read the reviews, and that's a loss to them.
So is that enough of a loss? Because they have to prove like a monetary loss as part of the defamation proceedings. Is having to find another employee enough of a loss to justify defamation?
Well, I guess this is when the forensic accountants might come rolling on and say, this is what the cost is because they've lost an opportunity. I mean, it's getting a little bit speculative, you know, loss of a chance. And of course, they've got the onus of proving loss. Zuru have to prove loss. But under our laws, which are very plaintiff-friendly, all that Zuru need to do is say there's been a publication, which there has on Glassdoor, it's defamatory, and those reviews, anyone reading them would say, oh yeah, well, they're not very positive, you know, so they're defamatory. And then to be able to point to a defendant, and this is the idea of getting the information from Glassdoor, who the defendants would be, and then showing a loss. At that point, they've established everything they need to do to get over the hurdle. Then the onus shifts to the defendants to make out a defence if they can.
Do you think that Kiwis will be more worried about posting on these kinds of things? Should they take a step back and say, should I really type that in?
Well, my own view is that for a long time now, decades, the internet has created a Wild West bastion with the keyboard warriors sitting in front of a screen thinking, I can say whatever I like and I can't be touched. It's cases like this that actually, I think, serve a good message out there that, well, you aren't actually necessarily that safe. So make sure that you're able to back up what you're going to say, because if it turns out that it's not true, or it's not your honest opinion, or you don't have some other legal escape mechanism, then you should be held to task, because the damage that these sorts of reviews can do to, and I mean, Zuru is a large international business, but for small New Zealand businesses, you know, I'm thinking of the one-person plumber who gets an unfair review, and then that's the end of their livelihood.
So, you know, if you're posting anonymous reviews, there needs to be more accountability, perhaps.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and there needs to be more of a mature attitude where people go, there's no, if I'm not prepared to front up to someone and look them in the eye and say what it is that I believe, then don't say it online.
Chris Patterson, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Right, in a statement, Zuru co-founder Nick Mowbray said the reviews on Glassdoor were fraudulent and fake and, they believe, written by the same person. He said Zuru tried to work with Glassdoor to have the reviews removed, but it wasn't until they took legal action that it happened. Nick Mowbray did not confirm whether defamation action would now go ahead in New Zealand.
E whai ake nei, panellists Trish Schuson, Jason Walls and Kylie Quinn